what we have is that suppose you have data D and which has some attributes, say A1, A2, En. Then if I'm going for mining this particular D and applying some sort of algorithm, then what actually mean is association rules. So I can have rules like I can say that A3 is some sort of, say, condition 1 I can go for, and then A6 there is another condition 2, and then it lead to some sort of, say, uh, A9 with some value. Okay, what does it mean is like this particular rule is referred as association rule. Okay, this I can say that suppose your A3 is, I can consider as some, say, age is, say, is between 30 to 40, and say income is 50 to 70, and then there is a possibility that a particular person may buy a laptop. So if I'm going for such rule where I'm specifying that the person age is between 30 to 40 and his income or her income would be in between 50 to 70, then there is a possibility that the person may buy laptop. Okay. Now the question is how I define it. Like I can say that X, I can prefix like X and then IX. That means X person having age this, income having this, may go for laptop. So this is an example of association rule. Now the question is why this is important. Uh, since this is important in the case that this is very much useful in practical life, like there are so many industry organizations, and you can say even in academia, uh, they are using these association rule mining. Okay, the very famous example you can see that the first what we have is that market basket analysis. How many of you are actually well aware of this market basket analysis? Certainly, I think most of us have experienced this market basket analysis. Uh, I think almost all of us have visited this, say, Big Bazaar or Pantaloon or Spencer or, say, Walmart. So there are so many retail markets are available, and like Reliance and all. So all these retail market, what they are doing is that what you are doing is basically you are just going in the market with a basket, say basket, and you are filling items out in it. Okay. Now, the moment you are exhausted with your list, whatever intended to be taken from that market, then you move to the counter and then you pay the bill and then you come out. Now the question is that something which particular retail market is analyzing on your data? The answer is yes. They are analyzing it, and reason are so many. Reason because that analysis will actually lead to, say, some demand management could be done, say some inventory management could be done, say some self management. So it is useful for so many ways. It may be used for demand management, it may be used for inventory management, it may be used for self management, and above all it may be used for actually increase in profit. And this is the ultimate goal of any company, any organization. So the question is how they are doing it. Let me tell you one thing. What you are doing actually in the market. Suppose you actually entered in the market with 5 item list. Okay, and then you actually go on for purchasing those 5 items. But in the meantime, while moving around the shelf, you are actually buying some more items which were not in your list. That is one sort of enhancement or one sort of profit, you can say, they are looking for. Another thing is that there are some discount items which they are offering, even if those items are not in your list, but still you are buying it. That is again a profit and all. So there are so many things which comes and which need to be analyzed, that what actually the pattern of the buyers. So they actually analyze your pattern of buying, and that and how. The answer is very simple. That uh, suppose there are 100 customer who is actually visiting this particular big bazaar, and then they found that there is an item X, there is an item X, and there is an item, say, P, which is which was actually purchased by 90% of the customers. Happening in this case is that suppose there are two items X and P, which is actually purchased by 90% of customer. Now this is what actually, some like after some, like you can say, analysis, they got it that XP are two items which was purchased by 90% of customers. Now the question is how I can use this particular pattern for whatever, like in case of self management, in case of inventory, in case of demand, in case of increase in profit also. I can tell you that this can be used for in all whatever I have just cited out. It can be used for all. Like it can be used for demand also. It can be used for inventory. It can be used for self management, and it can be used for profit. Let me tell you one thing. Say, suppose X is your bread and say P is your butter. Okay. So what I am concluding, like your what they can conclude is bread is having a strong association with butter. The reason is very simple, because 90% of the customers are buying it. Okay. So this is my confidence level which I am talking about, that bread and butter are purchased by many of the customers, right? Most of the customers. Now, how can I use this particular part for all these? Certainly, I can actually rearrange my demand depending upon the purchase habit of the customer. So certainly, I can increase my bread and butter demand. I know that it is demanded. So the moment I demand is high, certainly I have to manage the inventory also accordingly. So I'll actually ask the manufacturer to send more breads, more butter in that case. Now, third case comes is self. Then how I can actually use this pattern for the self management? There are two things in comes in picture. Uh, like suppose one way is that suppose there are this is one floor of retail market. So there are two way I can make this self management. What we can do is that in one I'll put bread and butter at one place. What happens is out here is that even if your list is having only bread, sometimes you look on butter and you say, okay, this might be required also. So you take the butter as well. So this is actually increase in profit. And this is what you have done for self-management. What you did is looking on the frequent purchase by customers out of this bread and butter, you keep both the items together. Even if the person is coming for butter or even if the person is coming for bread, they actually take the other, even if that is not in his or her list. That is one thing which you can do. There another way of doing it is that I can keep bread in one corner and I can keep butter in another corner. Since this is frequently purchased, then the customer certainly coming for bread and butter both will take the bread out here and then actually moving from this place to this place having this butter. What is happening in between is that you are actually looking on the items. And what you are doing is that if the retail market is offering you a very good discount in some of the items which is not in your list, but still you pick the items, that is again enhancing the profit. So this, sometimes we call it, this is a negative marketing strategy. Negative in the sense that you are actually intensely you are just making the customers to buy many things in between. Whereas the first one is a positive marketing, that is that bread butter you are keeping all together because it is frequently purchased, so people can get it very easily at one place. Whereas in this case, you are keeping FR because that you want that some other the customer may also go for butter after taking bread. Then in between they can go through all the items which is kept, and there is a high possibility that some of the items will be picked by the customer. So this is what the you can say the advantage out of the association rules. This is just a simple association rule which you are having it as bread and butter. This is not stopped out here. I can have association rules where I can say that X and Y, two items, may lead to P and Q. That means what I'm saying is that there is XY items. If a customer is going for XY item together, then it has a strong association with these two items also, in a way that if XY is purchased by customer, there is a high probability that that customer may go for P and Q also. This may not be stopped out here. This may be go for, say, N number of items, and this may go for an M number of items. That means on left side, there are N number of items may be associated with the M number of items on the right side. Certainly, each of these items will carry some sort of conditions. Like it may, like whether it is a one-dimensional association rules or multi-dimensional association rules, it depends on that. Okay. So all such we are. Now the question is, then how this particular retail market is actually putting my data or customer data in a form that it can be used for analysis or for generating this association rules. What they do is they treat you as one. They treat you as one transaction, and they keep it like this. What they are doing is they are doing like this. This is transaction ID, and these are items. So what you have is T101 I can write, T102 I can write, and so on. And I can write here that X, Z, P, A, these items are purchased by one first customer, then X, Y, K, A, B, these are items purchased by another customer. So the whole set of this purchase pattern of the customers will be transformed into a transaction ID with set of items purchased by the individual customers, and this whole data set is referred as transactional database. This is known as transactional database. That means you can create a transactional database where actually it's a two-column database where actually first column corresponds to the transaction ID and another column corresponds to the individual items purchased by the individual transactions. When I say transactions, that means I'm talking about one customer. So this is what we are doing, and certainly normally when you go for such market, then you never realize that you are actually scanned. even if they are not asking you anything, they are not going for your identity, your backgrounds and other things, but still they are analyzing your basket, and they are using it for what you can say that decision making also. And based on decisions, they are actually maintaining demand, inventory, self, and obviously enhancing the profit. So that this is what we do. So this particular entire process which I have just discussed is referred as market basket analysis, because you are going for market, you are using your basket, and you are doing we are doing analysis on that. So it is popularly referred as market basket analysis. Okay. So the question is, obviously, as far as domain is concerned, the grocery store will be a domain. It can be a individual shop also, you can consider, or it can be a retail market, or it can be any other organizations where such things are going on. Now the question is that can it be used for some other application also? So yes, it can be used. Like you can see that if you look on this, you'll find that market basket analysis can be mapped to the document analysis also, where actually baskets can be a document and items I can refer as words, and then words appearing frequently together in documents may represent phrases, or a link concepts will be there. So it can be used for intelligence gathering. Okay, so that means each transaction ID will have a document ID, and the items will be having the words, and then we try to find out the association between words. So that associations may lead to some pattern where actually you can say that these are phrases, or there may be some other link between the words can be find out. Okay, this is what we are doing it. You know this how many of you are well aware of that? You know that this Big Bazaar or other Reliance or whatever market you are looking for, you know how many items the Big Bazaar is dealing for this retail market across India? You will be surprised that the number of items, because there are set of items which is actually exclusively made for South India, or maybe for North India, West or East, depending upon the food habits or likings, whether it is clothing or another things. They actually vary the items, and certainly altogether, the Big Bazaar is dealing with approximately around 1.8 lakh items. Just imagine that how much data they are having it, and how much analysis is required for such decision making. Okay, so this is what the application of the association mining. Now the question is that if any questions I can answer right now. Let me check the chat. Okay, there is no question from this. Okay, so no questions. I'm just moving forward. Okay, fine. So next is that where it can be used, as I told you, that it can be used for so many domains. It can be used in fault detection in telecommunication network. It can be used for traffic analysis also. It can be used for document analysis. It is widely used for bioinformatics, because there are protein sequence and all, where actually we look for association between the subsequences, and they actually do a lot of analysis on that. So it is very highly useful, and it is useful for computational chemistry as well. The components involved is that the first thing which you require is a transaction database. Just now I have described that how this transaction database is made. Certainly, transaction database may vary depending upon domain. Then we have item sets. Item sets are actually the items which is the second column, where actually you are referring that what are the items are there. Then the question is there is a use of frequent or large item sets, where actually you are looking for that what are the items, or what are the say words in case of document are frequent. Certainly the frequency of frequent large item set will depend upon your support. That means this is There is support and there is confidence, which actually have a important role. Uh, Support is, these two are actually user defined. User defined means either since you are analyzing it, you can fix it, or your user can fix it. User means certainly if you are doing the analysis for the Big Bazaar, then Big Bazaar is your user, and certainly by discussion or having some background knowledge of the domain, you can fix this support and confidence. Okay, I'll will define this. What is this support and confidence? Okay. Now, type of association rules, if you look, then we have Boolean and quantitative association rules. Boolean means you can see that when I say bread and butter, that means I'm just looking for presence or absence of this particular association. And when I talk about quantitative, then I'm just specifying that the person is having the income in between this, then it may buy a projection TV. So this is what, when you are actually specifying the quantity, then it is quantitative ARs. Single dimensions and multi-dimensionals as far as is concerned, then certainly this, when I say buys X, person X is going for bread, then there is a possibility that person X will go for butter also. Okay, this is one dimension or single dimension. Whereas multi-dimensional, this is multi-dimensional ARs, where actually there are three dimensions: age, income, and buys are used. So there are three dimensions used in this. I can go for two dimensions also. I can go for n dimensions also. There are single and multi-label ARs also. Single label means the whole association will be actually presented in one single label. Whereas in some other cases, I'll be going for the multiple labels. Okay, like suppose if I'm saying, say that, okay, fine. If I say that bread and butter, if you look for, then I may be having that this is something like white bread or brown bread, I can say. Then this is what you can say, full or half, whatever, some nomenclature you can follow. So there are two category of butter, there is full cream, half cream, something like that, or uh, say bread where is white and brown bread is there. Okay, so this is what we attend to. And now the association, you may look for this to this, or this to this, or maybe this to this and this to this, or you may be looking for this, and somewhere you may be interested to have this to this also, or you may this to this also. So any sort of association rules you can look for. So when you look, when you go for such label of associations where same set of attributes are contributing, then we call it as multi-level association rules. Okay, fine. Then what is support and confidence in our case? The definition says the rule must have some minimum user specified confidence. Say, for example, if I say that 1 and 2 together associated with 3 strongly has a 90% confidence. If when a customer bought 1 and 2, in 19% of cases, the customer also bought 3. This is what confidence is. Whereas rule must have some minimum user specified support, where actually we can say that 1 and 2 have support, 1 and 2 have a strong association with 3, having should hold some minimum percentage of transactions to have business value. Okay, so what you have is that some association rules XY holds with support T if T percentage of transaction in DB that support X also support Y. Okay, so that is what we mean it. For example, this is what some diagrammatic you can see that if I'm looking for customers having buying some beer, customer buying some diaper, then customers buys both. So that we look for. Actually, the confidence lies in common area, whereas support may lie in uh, in the other area. Uh, so formally what we have is that I is set of all items, D is a transactional database. Then association rule A, B has support S if S is the percentage of transaction in D that contains A union B, both A and B. So the support of association rule AB is actually the probability of A union B, whereas AR of like association rules AB has confidence C in D if C is the percentage of transaction in D containing A that also contains B. Always remember this is a conditional probability. You can see that what we are looking for is that given A, that means you already purchased A, then what is the probability that you are purchasing B? So that particular probability will give you the confidence. Okay. So this is what PA union B, PA union B by PA. So don't be confused. I'm just calling it as A union B, but it is actually it is A and B. Okay, fine. This is especially like this is designed like that only. So don't be confused with A union B. Other than this is A and B. Okay. Now you can check the support and confidence how it is actually calculating. What we are saying is that for minimum support 50% and minimum confidence 50%, what are the rules you can draw from this particular data? Okay, so let us take the first example, 1 3. So 1 3, it says that it is 50% support in this translational database. Okay, so if considering this particular database, so what you have is that 50% support we have for 1 3. What does it mean? It means that if you can see that 1 3 is in this, 1 3 is in this. That means 1 and 3, how many times it is present in the transactions? So 2 times present, in 2 transactions it appears. So that means out of 4, in 2 transactions 1 and 3 appears. So it can, that support is 50%. Now, how the confidence will be generated? So what is happening in this case? That means you have to check that you have already purchased one. Then what is the probability that you go for 3? So you can see that out of 4 transactions, 3 transactions is having 1. See, 1, 1, 1. And out of these 3, there are 2 transactions going for 3. So out of 3, 2. So actually is 2 by 3. Okay. So this 2 by 3 is nothing but it is 66%. So your confidence is 66%. So this way we actually define the support and confidence. And always remember that 1 3 association rules of 1 3 is not same as 3 1, because 1 3 and 3 1 is 2 different association rules. Why? The reason is that 1 3 says that you have 1 and there is a probability that you may go for 3, whereas 3 1 says that you have 3 and there is a probability that you go for 1, and obviously the probability will be defined by support and confidence. So in case of 3 1, you can see that it is 50% support and 100% confidence. Fine. Any query you can ask me. The question is association is same as correlation between data attributes? No, it's just let me tell you that we are not talking about numerical correlation, but what we are talking about, that obviously this is a correlation, but in the sense, certainly later on we'll talk about correlation also. But here what we are talking about is, it is actually we are talking about that what is the association between items in terms of purchase habits of the customers. Okay, so this is what we are talking about. Okay. Uh, Tarun Kumar Rajput, am I audible? Actually, not audible to me because I am having some receiving problem. Okay, let me check. What you are saying is, uh, no, this is see what is happening is that see conditional probability formula is correct in the sense that we have defined this formula for our support and confidence. P A and B, as I already told you, that P A and B means P A and B, and by PA. So PA is 1, so one occurrence is 3, whereas PA and B is 1, 3. So occurrence, number of occurrence of 1, 3 is twice, so it is 2 by 3. So it is correct. Okay. Okay. So let us go for how this actually we can go for by using some sort of methods or algorithms so that I can find out some association rules out of it. So as far as mining association rules is concerned, it's a two-step process. In first step, find all frequent item sets, which is satisfying minimum support. Whereas in second steps, what you're doing is you're generating the strong ARs from frequent item sets. So it is actually satisfying the minimum support as well as minimum confidence. Okay. Uh, Finding out the frequent item sets, we have many algorithms. The most important algorithm is a priori. You can see that this is the main algorithm. And as far as these algorithms are concerned, this is actually the variations of a priori. So this is variations of a priori algorithm. Okay, variation in the sense that we still use the same algorithm, but with some lot of there is some sort of alteration that instead of going for the entire data, we are using sampling, then we are using partition also, we are using hash-based techniques, we are using transition reduction. So we actually the algorithm fundamental or steps are same, but we are just varying the entire procedure, and that actually results to some sort of algorithm in terms of sampling, partitioning, hash based, and transition reduction. So we'll talk about all the algorithms. Now, what actually the priori algorithm is, that actually it actually start with candidate generation, and we start with level wise search, then we go for frequent one item set, then we go for frequent two item sets, and until no more frequent k item sets can be found, uh, we just go for iteration. Okay. So certainly finding each lk requires one pass, that means one scan. Okay. There are two property which actually a priori is having. uh, the first property is a priority property, which we call it. It says that suppose when I say that item together AB is frequent, then both an AB should be frequent also. See, when I say frequent, that means I'm talking about support percentage. Say if I say that 50%, if you have transactions, say 10 numbers, so that means the frequency of item AB depends upon that how many times, like if it is 5 or more than 5 occurrence are there in transaction, then AB becomes frequent for me. If it is less, then AB is infrequent. And similarly, what we are looking for is that if AB is frequent item sets, then it is necessary to have this individually A and B should also be frequent item set. Okay, this is first property. Whereas in anti-monotone property, which we look for, that if a set cannot pass a test, then all its supersets will fail the test as well. That means if I say that AB is not frequent, then certainly A, B, C will also be not frequent. That means with all the supersets will not be frequent in that case. So it is actually both the property is actually countering each other and satisfy the thing. Okay, so this is one example that how this frequent item sets you can see just now properties can be verified. See, for example, ACD is large item sets, then AC, AD, CD, ACD, and these are large item sets too. That means what I'm saying is that if I say that ACD is frequent item set, then all its subsets like this, this, and this. Certainly, this is also subset, but I'm not considering this is an empty set. So all the subsets should also be frequent. Then only I can say that ACD is a large item set. Okay, fine. That is one thing. And if anti-monotone, that means if A is frequent, then only AC is A and C are frequent, then only AC will be frequent. So vice versa can be true. Okay. Now let me go for a priori algorithm. What is happening in this case is the first comes is this transaction database. Okay, where I am just looking for when I'm having 4 transactions, say transaction ID is 100, 200, 300, and 400, having items 1, 3, 4, and 2, 2, 3, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, fine. This is what we have now, and 400 is having 2, 5. So you have 4 transactions. Now I'm applying this a priori. Then first case will be going for the first candidate set C1. So what we have is there are 5 distinct items present in this transaction, these transactions or this transaction database. So I'm just looking for the frequencies of these items. So I'm having this one as having frequency as 2, 2 is having 3, 3 is having 3, 4 is having 1, and 5 is having 3. Okay, fine. This is what we have. Now, suppose if we fix support as 50%, then what is happening is that if I fix 50% support, then what we believe is that minimum 2 transaction occurrence is required to satisfy the 50% support. So in that case, this 4 is not frequent item set. Okay, so just remember that I'm fixing support as 50%. So this 4 will be ignored because it is infrequent, whereas 1, 2, 3, 5 will be referred as frequent. So first level of large item sets are this 1, 2, 3, 5. So this is first level. So L1 is there. Now I'll be going for L2. Before having this L2, I have to generate C2. So I'm generating C2 as this. Okay. C2 is actually the combination of all the items which is present in L1. So it may be 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 5, 3, 2, 3, 2, 5, and 3, 5. This maximum combinations you can generate this. So this is my C2. Then I'll be going for scanning the database. Then these are the supports which you can get. That 1, 2 is having 1 occurrence, whereas 1, 3 is having 2 occurrence, 1, 5 is having 1 occurrence, 2, 3 is having 2 occurrence, 2, 5, 3, and 3, 5, 2. You can check with the data. This is what we are. Now still I'm sticking with the support 50%. So 1, 2 will be ignored, then 1, 5 will be ignored. So your L2 will be generated like this. So your L2 is 1, 3, 2, 3, 2, 5, and 3, 5. Okay. Using this L2, I'll generate the C3, which is nothing but it's a 3 item combinations. So I'll be going for C3 first. So all possible combinations like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 5, 1, 3, 5, or 2, 3, 5. All these combinations will be generated. And then for generating this L3, you'll be going for counting, and what you get is that 235 is only the combination which is frequent, because you can see that 235 is occurring in two transactions. In second transaction and third transaction, it is 235. So it is actually having the minimum support, whereas others are not having the minimum support. So all are ignored, and this is actually the L3. Since in L3 only one item combination is there, so there is no need to go further, because you cannot generate the combination of four items out of this only one. So we stop here, or your algorithm terminates out here, and you are having now all frequent item sets. Okay. So you have frequent item sets like, just a minute. Okay. So what you have is that now you can see that we have frequent item sets as 1, 2, 3, 5, then 1, 3, 2, 3, 2, 5, 3, 5, and then 2, 3, 5. These are the frequent item sets you have. That means your first step is over out right now. Now, out of these all these frequent item sets, I can generate some association rules, and you can apply some confidence, your confidence percentage, so that I can accept or I can reject the association rules accordingly. Pruning steps, will discuss that you can prune those candidate items at all of whose subsets are not frequent. That can be done any steps. So your candidate generation is like this, and obviously each time you move to the next candidate set, the previous candidate sets will be added, and all these frequent item sets will be generated and will be unioned. Okay. What does it mean, pruning? We can see in this particular example. This is just an example that suppose you have this L3 where actually A, B, C, A, B, D, A, C, D, A, C, E, and B, C, D are the frequent item sets. So this is some other example where actually I have actually this L3, which is this. Now, for generating the next level of frequent item sets or large item sets, you'll be going for self joining of this L3 into L3. That means you will be generating some sort of four items combinations, like suppose ABCD and ACD you can generate. ABCD can be generated from ABC and ABD, whereas ACD can be generated from ACD and ACE. So out of these two can be generated. Now the question is, this ACD will not contribute in the next step. The reason is very simple, that ACD is removed because of AD is not in L3, because ADE is actually the subset of this, but this AD is not in this particular set. So that means by the virtue of the properties, which two properties we have seen, that it says that if subsets are not frequent, then the supersets may not be frequent as well. So ACD cannot be frequent because AD is not frequent. So you can leave that ACD or ignore that, and then you move forward with candidate set 4 as ABCD. Okay, so this is pruning steps you can apply in between also. As far as association rules minings are there, you can actually make use of this formula. For each Fi is L, generate all non-empty subsets of L. So the formula is, for each non-empty subset S of L, output the rule as S L minus S if support count of L by support count of S is greater than or equals to minimum confidence. Now, what I'm saying is very simple. You have this frequent item sets, okay? You have this frequent item sets. Say you have 3, 5. I do not remember that whether it is 3, 5 is there or not. Let me see. Yeah, 3, 5 is your in L2. So I can take the example of 3, 5. What does it mean? The formula is, So your L is now, this is your L, 3, 5. Now what I can do is that I can say S is 5. So this is 5. Then obviously L minus S will be 3. So that means I am talking about association rule, which is actually 5, 3. Okay. So the formula says that support count of L, that means your 3, 5, and then support count of S, that is 5. This must be greater than equals to the confidence you fix. This is what actually the confidence talks about. That you can see that this is nothing but P A union B by P A, where actually I am talking about 5 as A and 3 is B. So this is what we do. Okay. So that is required to be checked. So once it is checked, and if like suppose you have fixed something, like see, it depends that on different domain your confidence percentage will be different. Okay, this will be different. Reason is simple, that I can say that in case of like retail market, where actually I'm looking for daily eatable items, then I can say that it is 90% confidence I'm looking for. But the moment I go for electronics item, then for electronics item, I cannot fix this 90% confidence, because as you know that it is costlier items. Most of the customers might not be going for it. Very few customers are going for it, and it is high profit items. So even if few are going for it, it is profitable also. So in case of electronics, I may be interested to have 50% confidence only. Like suppose in case of document analysis, the word associations, I may be interested to have 70%, or I may be interested to have 90%, depending upon what type of word document analysis I'm looking for. So the confidence always depend upon user, or you can say the data analyst will fix it depending upon your requirement. So it is, and actually the association rules always depends on these user defined parameters. Okay, so you have to be very wise while defining this support and confidence before you go for association rule mining. So that is what we look for. Okay, so certainly if I go for that, if I'm considering that L is 235, then there is, these are the combinations you can go for. So you can find out that if I'm looking for association rules like this, then you can see that confidence is 100%, in this case 66%, 100%, 100%, 60%, this one. Now if I choose that confidence, minimum confidence should be 80%, then this will be discarded, this will be discarded, and rest will be accepted. So two association rules will be discarded and rest will be accepted, because 2, 5 with association with 3 and 3 with association with 2, 5 is not having the minimum confidence as 80%. So you can discard it and rest will be accepted. That is what we are doing in this particular thing. Okay. So this is what we have. You can go through it. Observations, as far as that, what we have is that you know that every time you go for candidate generations, you actually self-joining the previous frequent item sets. That is like generating C2, you require L1 and L1 to be self-joined, whereas generating C3, then L2 will be self-joined. This is what happening. So number of candidates in C2 will be L1 C2. That is a combinatorial formula, you can use it. Whereas the larger the C2 by CK, the more processing cost required to discover FIs. Okay, this is something is observation, because every time for each iterations you are going for scanning the database, and it depends that how much search requirement you have. Okay. So this is what a priori talks about. This is a very simple algorithm and which is widely used, very popular, and there are some variations which has been proposed. Okay, so I'm just taking 5 minutes break, then we'll come back for the next part.
For the next part is variation of the a priori. Okay, fine. Variation of the a priori, the techniques like hash-based techniques, then there is a transaction reduction, then there is a partitioning, then there is sampling, and there are dynamic item set counting where actually you are adding candidate item sets at different points during a scan. Okay. So just go for one by one. Uh, First one is very interesting also, and that is sampling algorithm. I think at the word itself, sampling actually says that you are actually working on samples rather than the entire data. So what we are doing is that random transactions of the original database are selected, that is sampled, and placed in a much smaller sample database. Fine. So we are just picking some samples out of the data. Uh, the question always be there that what would be the size of the sample. So it is good enough that you go for the size of sample as same as what you have main memory available, because in that case the entire samples can reside in the memory and the algorithms can be executed in one go, and that will actually make the algorithm execution efficient. Okay. uh, Obviously, the moment if the entire, like whatever data you're looking for analysis is in memory itself, in main memory itself, then obviously it reduces the number of data scan. Okay. So there is a concept of potentially large item sets in sampling. What we have is that what you are actually doing out here is, let me tell you one thing. What you are doing is that you have, say, D, which is a large bucket of data. Now you are taking the sample, say S1, which is a small sample out of this particular data. Okay. Now you are applying a priori on this. Obviously. So obviously you'll be getting some sort of large atom set, say LK I'll be getting out of. So since this LK represents only the sample data, so that's why we are calling it as potentially large. Okay. So PL, potentially large item sets. Uh, the reason is very simple, that it actually not representing the entire data set. So we just talk about potentially large. And there is always possibility that some of the frequent item sets might be missed by while considering this sample. So our goal is that can we actually generate some more large item sets which is having the high probability to be there, which can be generated through if we'll consider the entire data set. Okay, that is what we do it. So that actually we can do using this NB function. This is NB function. This is known as negative border function, and this is actually then what we have is that uh, when we generate this, you have PL, then negative border function will generate some of the items. So PL will be updated with PL union NB. Okay. And certainly you have to have some sort of iteration out there. And finally, the final PL will be referred as L. Okay. So this is what we do it in this. Now let us go and see that how these negative border functions will return the item sets. Okay. So process is very simple, that sample transactions from database D, then use a priori algorithm to find the potentially large item sets. Uh, so candidate set C1 contains item sets from PL union NB PL. Okay. Then scan the original database, check the support of each candidate in C1. Those that meet the minimum support requirements will be added into L. This is what we do it. These are the details which NB functions carries. Let me go to the example which will actually clearly explain the process. Okay, this is what the example is. What we have is say that you have A, B, C, D, four item sets are there in some transactions. Now, uh, when you actually sampled S1 and applied the a priori, uh, then actually you got this PL, potentially large. Okay. So A, C, D, and CD. These are the actually set of items which are frequent in sample S1. Okay. So you got it. Now what actually negative border function does is that now I can make use of negative border function out here. So this is my original PL. Okay. Now I'm applying the properties of the a priori. So the property says that since A and C are frequent, then this AC might also be frequent. If you remember the property, since A and D are frequent, so AD are frequent. So in the first case, NB function, this AC and AD will be generated. So you can actually put it into set form also. Okay, comma. Okay, this is. So what will happen in first case is that your PL will be PL union NB. Okay, this NB will add this AC and AD. So this is first thing comes. Now your PL becomes ACD, CD, and AC and AD is also part of that CL. Now the question is, we'll move forward for the next level, and then we'll see that can it be possible that by using the property, other item like some other three item combinations could be part of the NB? So the answer is yes. You can see that this ACD might also be frequent because all the subsets are frequent. That means A, C, and D are frequent, whereas AC, AD, and CD becomes frequent by applying the first level of NB functions. So now the NB function, which is at C3, will be ACD. Okay. So now you can update PL again union by NB function, and now this ACD will be added. So what final the large item sets which actually comes is your L is nothing but the latest PL. Okay. So that L consists of A, C, D, AC, AD, CD, and ACD. So, and originally the potentially large item sets were actually A, C, D, and CD. So you have added three combinations of the items, which has the high probability that it can be frequent as well, because that we have used just the properties of the a priori algorithm. So that is what we are doing in sampling algorithm and applying this PL and NV function. Hope this is okay. Any query you can ask me. Any query you can ask me. No queries? Okay, so I'll move forward. Next is partitioning. Partitioning is actually can anybody tell me that what sort of improvement or efficiency we get from this sampling algorithm? The efficiency is that if you look on the normal a priori algorithm, then what is happening is it is actually executing on the entire data. And there is always possibility that in data set is quite large and that in one go it cannot accommodate in the main memory. So as many actually batches you'll be going for, that means input output is required. So that will actually increase in the complexity part. Okay, so that is happening. Fine. What is happening in sampling algorithm is that in one sample I am considering, which is of actually of size of main memory, which is available to you, and it can accommodate in the main memory, and in one go I can execute the entire a priori algorithm. So that is actually one efficiency is coming, and it is actually it is very much good enough for us. So that's why we use this sampling algorithm. Partitioning says that instead of going for entire D to be executed for a priori, first let us go for the partition. Say what we are saying is that we can go for n number of partitions. Okay, n number of partitions. Certainly, this n can be always decided by that what is the size of D and what is the size of main memory. So this will give you the n. Okay, so that means what I'm looking for, each partition I'm looking for of size of main memory. Okay, so D1, D2, Dn. Certainly the last partitions might be less depending upon what is the size of the data, because exactly the same size cannot be the part of the practical implementation. So we have n number of partitions. Now for each partitions we are calling it and we are applying this a priori. And for each partitions we are generating this large item set. And then at last we'll be going for global large item sets by taking union of the all large item sets of the each partition. So that is what we are doing. And then further, as far as association rules are concerned, we'll be applying the same thing which we have done in simple priori. Okay, so this is what split the database into n partitions. So apply the algorithm, and then you'll be generating the candidate sets, which is nothing but union of n times of partitions which you are going for. So each partition generating LIs, and all these LIs will be unioned. Okay, and then go for minimum support and confidence criteria for generating this final L. Okay, this is just an example. So this way I can go for L1, L2, L3 and all, and then we can go for union of all these L1, L2, L3. These are some examples where actually in part there are so many partitions you have. So you can have first partition is generating this L1, then second partition L2, then L3, then the global candidate sets will be L1 union L2 union L3. Only the thing is in this case, you'll be just going for each partition. Can anybody can tell me that what is the advantage of using this partitioning algorithm? Because normally, if you see, we are applying the algorithm on the entire data set, which we already is having it in the simple a priori. What is the advantage and what are the disadvantage in this case? Simple, what advantage we are getting is that for each partition which resides in the main memory, the entire a priori is executed at once. So if you have n partitions, so only n number of database scan is required, batch is required. Whereas for a priori, simple a priori, each iteration requires that n number of batches to be in the main memory. So that is what the efficiency you are getting out of it. Each iteration is having n number of, whereas just one n batches will be sufficient enough to execute this partition. Okay. So this is what efficiency we are getting out of it. Fine. Then hash-based algorithm, the larger the CK, the more processing cost required to discover FIs. That we have already seen it. So we just try to reduce the size of CK, and obviously K always we can do it only for K is greater than 1. Okay. So we have direct hashing and pruning, whereas it is efficient generation for FIs and reduction of transaction database size as well. We make use of subset functions, that is finds all the candidates contained in a transaction. What we do it is actually just efficient counting is used in this case. So after each transaction, after one item sets are counted, two item sets of the transactions are generated and hashed into hash table H2. So what we are doing is this. So let me go for the full screen. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. So this is my what you are doing is that you have generated your C1 as we have seen already in the simple algorithm. So you have 1, 2, 3, 5 as first large item sets. So obviously you'll be going for joining this L1. So you'll be getting this 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 5, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 5, and 3, 5. Now I'll be like here we can apply some hash-based technique. So what we are doing is the first thing which we are doing is this, that we have hash function, which actually what we have is order of x into 10 plus order of y mod 7 we are using. So since mod 7 we are using, so it will generate 7 buckets for us. So that 7 buckets is nothing but this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now what, first of all, what you are doing out here is, let me, just a minute. So what we are doing is, first of all, for each transactions, make the pairs. That means you have 1, 3, 4. There are 3 items. Just make pairs of that. 1, 3, 1, 4, 3, 4. Similarly, 200 we make pairs. 300 then we make pairs. Then 400 we make pairs. Okay, fine. Now, depending upon this hash function, like suppose 1, 3, if I'm talking about 1, 3. So it is nothing but 10 plus 3 and mod 7. So this will 13 mod 7, which is 6. So you can see that 1, 3 is allocated to the 6th bucket. Okay. So similarly, 1, 4, 3, 4 will be mapped, and all the pairs which is generated in this particular table will be mapped to the hash table. Okay. So this is my, so you'll be find that this is my table. So what we have got is the 0 bucket is having 3 items, 1 bucket is having 1 items, 2 bucket is having 2 items, 3 is having 0, 4 is having 3, 5 is having 1, and 6 is having 3. Now I can apply the support count here, and what we see is that I can ignore this, I can ignore this, and I can ignore this. This we can do that. And then what we have is, then what C2 is having left with is that C2, you can see that you have 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 5, 2, 3, 2, 5, and 3, 5 is there. Okay. So this is what, so what we have is that 1, 2 is having just one count. You can see that 1, 2 is having just 1, 1, 3 is having 1 3 1 3 1 3 is having, you can see that, uh, 1 3 1 3 is having the bucket count as 3 because it lies in 6 bucket. Then 1 5 is having 1 because 1 5 is in the second bucket. Similarly, this is there. So now what you can do is that you can ignore this, you can ignore this. Now this and this becomes your large item sets. So 1 3 2 3 2 5 and 3 5 becomes your C2. So what we are doing is that, without like generating this C2, we do not go back to the algorithm and scanning the entire database. Rather than making this hash table and uh, using this hash table, we are just making the C2. Okay, this is what. So this actually introduces efficiency in the algorithm. That is what we are doing. Uh, there is one thing is left, like what is actually main is transaction reduction means. Okay, transaction reduction says that, like, this is also a priori which we have. It says that suppose this 4 becomes infrequent in the first iteration. Okay, so 4 is there. Suppose you have something like 500 where actually only this item is present. Okay, now in the first iteration this 4 becomes infrequent, so that means this is not frequent. Now since 500 is having only 4 as an item, then it has, that means this transaction has no significance in the rest of the iteration. So what it says is that since all the calculation has been done on the number of transaction as 5 for the first iteration, now ignore this particular transaction, and the next iteration the number of transaction will be considered as 4 instead of 5. So this is known as transaction reduction. That means you are just reducing the number of transactions depending upon the infrequent items involved in those transactions. So what we have is, that means, see, always remember that when you're talking about a practical implementation of such algorithms, then there are a huge number of transactions will be involved, maybe thousands, lakhs and all. So there is always possibility that there are many significant number of transactions might be there, where actually only the infrequent items are involved. And actually when these infrequent transactions actually contribute in probability calculations, it actually generates noise in that. So just what it says is that the moment a transaction having only infrequent sets of items, then ignore those transactions, and in the next iterations the count of the transaction will be reduced by ignoring those transactions. That is what transaction reduction talks about. So that is one variations of the a priori as well, and that actually introduces efficiency in the algorithm execution. Okay, this is what we have. So all these a priori variations along with simple a priori executions discussed today. Let me just discuss few things which already we have seen, that like multi-level association rules. When we talk about, as I already told you that this can be seen as, like, suppose association between bread and milk. Then milk is having skimmed milk, 2% milk, or bread is wheat and white, and then 2% is having some Fraser, Sunset, like some companies will be there. Now these associations may be seen as like this. There's like in first case just milk and bread, then I may be interested to have 2% milk with wheat bread. So you can see that in first level of associations, I'm sticking with some 20% and 60%. That means 20% support, 60% confidence. Whereas in the next level, I'm just reducing the support as 6%, and 60% is reduced to 50%. So you can stick with the same support and confidence, and you can also reduce the support and confidence depending upon your requirement. So this is known as like the first one is, if you are stick with the same set of support and confidence, it is referred as uniform support confidence. Whereas when you reduce the support and confidence in the lower level, it is referred as reduced support and confidence. Okay, fine. This is one thing. So uniform support, reduced support, just we have mentioned. This is one way where you can look. Label 1, I'm just talking about minimum support as 5%. Then in label 2 also, I'm just looking for minimum support as 5%. Reduced support is that in level 1, I'm just minimum support as 5%, but in level 2, I'm considering 3%. So it becomes reduced support. Multi-level associations, like you can see that some rules may be redundant due to ancestor relationship between items. For example, milk and wheat bread, and 2% of milk and wheat bread. So that is actually multi-level associations. So there is always scope of redundancy in this case. So based on the requirement, you have to choose whether I have to go for multi-level association or not. Okay? And you have to wise in that case. So you can see some examples, single dimensions, multi-dimensions, where actually this single dimensions is bias is only the dimensions in case only one dimensions, whereas in this case multiple dimensions are used. Okay, and these are the you can say the predicates we have used. Conditions, that means quantity is referred. Certainly you can go for categorical attributes also, whereas we can go for quantitative attributes also. Some sort of implicit ordering among values can be also put forward in the associations. So a lot many variations are there. So you can go for distance-based association rules, where you can go for some static discrimination and quantitative attributes as well. So this is what we have. I think these are just informative in sense. So what we have today is that we have covered today the whole sort of a priori methods for association rule mining, and like we have seen that how this a priori can be executed for any transactional example transactional database. And then since we have seen that this a priori algorithm, when we execute on say some sort of large data, then it has inefficiency involved because of so many number of input outputs required for the execution. So we have seen that there are some variations which can be done to have some efficiency to be introduced in terms of input output scans, number of scans, and in that case we can go for sampling, partitioning, transition reductions, and hash based also. We have seen multi-level association rules examples. Then there are different types of association rules you can frame out of the algorithm that we have seen. We have seen that two important things, support and confidence, is used, and that is user-defined parameters. So we have to be wise enough to define that. So that is what we have covered today. Next class, I'll be talking about some observation of the association rule mining also, and we'll talk about that how these correlations can also be a part of your association rule mining. And then we'll talk about some statistical parameters to be used, and also we'll be talking about some other algorithms which is more efficient than a priori and its variations. Okay, for today I'm just winding up the class.